settle in. Let's allow ourselves just to really honor the physical space where we are, the time that we have set aside just to show up. And also let's honor exactly how it is that we feel here in this moment. And so I would invite you just to get comfortable, allow your eyes to close or just cast down toward the ground. And just really get a sense of how you are. How you are on this day, how you are in this particular phase of life that you might be in. Just how are you? We ask that of others so often, but we don't always take time to check in with ourselves. And so let's just pause and do that. Maybe it's a quick body scan for you. Maybe it's just a chance to check in with your emotions. Maybe it's a survey of all the things that seem to clutter up your mind. Just check in. And then as you're checking in, get a sense of what that breath feels like. Just notice how the inhale is arriving, how deep it is or not. Notice how the exhale feels. And notice what the breath does to you physically, mentally, emotionally, energetically. And so we'll start our time together today with just a sense of awareness. And then we'll use this practice to bring ourselves into this space of calm, peace, oneness. And so let's just take a few breaths together, even though we are far apart geographically. Let's come together with the breath. So together, one slow, deep breath in, and one slow, deep breath out. And again, one breath in, and one breath out. One more time together, breathing in and breathing out. And then just settle into a rhythm that feels good. And just think for a second this idea of how we only do just breathe in one breath at a time. We don't rush it. We don't move into the future already thinking and worrying. Our breath allows us to be present in the here and the now. And so as we've gathered here together on this 4th of July holiday for just these few minutes of reflection, of stillness, of present moment being, I would invite you just to picture for yourself what freedom looks like. Generationally, geographically, culturally, we all have different ways of seeing this concept of freedom. And so whatever that looks like for you when you hear that word, just kind of tuck that away and just know that's your own personal connection. The images that that word conjures up. But this connection that we have with this meditation practice, this yoga path, freedom has a really universal definition, a really universal way of being. There's a word in Sanskrit called moksha. Thousands of years old, this word is talking about this liberation, this freedom that we have, but it's not talking about politically or geographically or with borders or armies. It's talking about something internal. Moksha, liberation, freedom. And one of the things that we all across this globe, no matter the color of our skin or the language we speak or where we live, the one thing we all want freedom from is the suffering part of life. We know that it's part of it. Our rational mind understands it's just part of the journey. But the one thing common to all humanity is we want freedom from it. We want it to end. Suffering looks different for all of us. It looks different at different times in our life and different situations, but it is something that we all experience. So how do we reconcile this idea of freedom, knowing that suffering is just part of the path? Well, this practice teaches us that while we understand that suffering will come, perhaps we learn to stop contributing to it. And there lies our freedom. Situations will come into our life. Circumstances will happen. We experience loss, heartache, trials, challenges. But the real meaning of this moksha, this liberation, this freedom, is when we can determine to stop contributing to that suffering. Stop contributing to that situation, that circumstance, that challenge. And that all sounds great, but how? I always, when I think about this idea of freedom, go back to the words of Viktor Frankl, this Holocaust survivor who in one statement, I think, told us one of the most profound ways of being and of living. He says, in between stimulus and response, there is a pause. And it's in that pause that I have a choice. And it's with that choice that I discover my freedom. A Holocaust survivor teaching us about liberating our mind, our heart, our spirit from the things that are causing us to suffer. In between stimulus and response, which means there will be stimulus. Things will push our buttons. Things will break our heart. Things will challenge our patience, our compassion. Sadly, that is just part of the human experience. But Viktor Frankl says that as those stimuli come in, because they will, before we respond, there's a pause. And I believe from the yogic teachings that in that pause is a breath. And I was very clear when we began. I said, just one breath in. Because sometimes that's all it takes, one breath. And there's our pause. There's that chance to choose a different response than maybe our emotions and our senses would want us to choose. And that is where lies our freedom, our moksha, our liberation. We know suffering will come. But I would challenge us in these few minutes that we're going to sit together in the quiet in just a moment. Let's just reflect on how we can intentionally, purposefully pause and not contribute to the suffering anymore. We will navigate the challenges. We will process the loss. We will work through the heartache. But it will not rob us of our ability to choose, our ability to breathe, our freedom. So let's just focus on that breath coming in and going out. And see if with that breath, you can begin to shift the image that you have in your mind when you hear the word freedom. One more time, Viktor Frankl's words, in between stimulus and response, there is a pause. And in that pause is my choice. And in that choice, that is where my freedom lies. So let's just each in our own space just sit and breathe and be aware of these reflections, these ideas that come across your mind. across your heart, across your spirit. But be aware of them, one breath at a time. What image do you see when you hear the word freedom? So often I think our community, our society, our world is waiting for someone else to act and to do and to decide in order for us to have freedom. But the beautiful gift of this practice is that we were reminded to start with us first. Start with us. With the stimuli coming into our life, our path, and our reminder to pause in the middle, cultivating the sense of peace and calm, as well as control over what that response will be. I trust the words of Viktor Frankl when he says, that is where your freedom lies. I don't just trust them, though, because his story has credibility. I trust them because I've learned from them and I've begun to live them. Stimuli will come. Maybe you had some come today. But with that breath, that powerful tool that you take everywhere you go, when you pause and you breathe before you respond, that's your freedom. So on this beautiful day of our country's celebration of freedom and independence, let's keep our focus also a little bit internal. Let's contribute to our sense of freedom, our moksha, our liberation, rather than contributing to our suffering. One breath, one choice at a time. Namaste.